All right, you guys need to acknowledge, I guess. Okay, I'm gonna turn this around, so since the camera there is not working.
Okay, so I'm on, and if somebody's next to me, they
You
be
wanna
on.
sit next
If you
to Jill?
go around, see if you can pick up Ellen. If you go across the table, then we can have a conversation.
Well, why don't you sit?
There you go. So
Wait a second.
here you go. Here's what we're seeing.
Okay. So maybe,
Bring that one down. The microphone.
maybe Jill, if you can move down a chair, I can sit there and we can do all three of us. And then we'll use that as a check.
Sorry, my back's cool. How's that?
I think that's fine.
And Morgan's online. She's from the Standard.
Okay. Yeah.
But she's
All right, so we do have quorum, folks, since it's the four of us. And I don't think Tom Phillip is joining you, said Jill, right?
I have a message from him if you want him to follow.
Okay, great. So why don't we declare the Finance Committee meeting of April 1st, full day 2024 open? And
It's okay. It only goes on till 12 o'clock.
All right, so before we get started, anybody wants to add anything to the agenda or propose a deletion? No? Okay. So that's good. We need to get the minutes approved, the minutes of last time approved. They were attached to the email that John sent around. I don't know if you got a chance to read it.
That was a recording or?
That was the recording, but he cleaned it up, right? So, anybody wants to motion?
I'll make a motion. to
All
approve
right.
the minutes.
Jill motions.
I'll second.
Okay, Alan seconds. And then, all four? Yes.
Yeah.
All-
Yes.
yeah, all in favor, and then Tom. Okay, so we got 4 yeses. And then we're all here, but Tom Phillip
And John.
and John Spector. Okay, I think we have one citizen online. Are there any citizens' comments? No, can you still hear us?
Morgan, are you still there?
Yes, I'm so sorry. I'm still here. I just have you guys muted because my dog is barking.
Okay, oh, well, I think he has a comment.
Yeah.
So, all right, great. So we're gonna skip that. I don't think we have any new business unless anybody came up with something. No?
No.
Okay, good. So pretty much today, we're gonna focus on the updates. And we can just run through the list. I have the updates of last time here printed, so hopefully we can just add to whatever was updated last time. But anyway, who wants to start with the water company, Jill or Tom?
I will.
Bill, go ahead.
Okay, all right, so we've made a little sub-team of myself and Tom, and we've invited Eric Duffy and then 2 people who have been on the water committee, Charlie Kimball and Alex Mully. So there's 5 of us. We've had 1 meeting, we'll have another meeting this week. We are working on establishing a couple of things for inputs into the model. So first of all, we've got the principles that we want the water rate structure, how you charge to be. So we're proposing some principles. And then we're working on what are the inputs of the model. That sounds terribly simple, but actually there's about 3 or 4 words used to describe the very same thing. So deciding what it is we're talking about. But basically we're thinking about a usage component, a capacity component that is described by the size of the pipe that enters your premises, and then connection charges. And then, so we want to do a little bit more work on those. And then we're building scenarios. So we'll feed what the inputs of the model are to John, and then we'll feed him different scenarios. So one scenario is the current Woodstock Aqueduct company method of charging. The second proposal will be the Woodstock Aqueduct's proposed method of charging, and then we'll build 3 or 4 more, and then that will be our input to John. So this team is not deciding what their structure is, but they would like to propose to the select board before the numbers are in. These are the principles, and these are the scenarios. Would you like to add any more scenarios that we will model? We'll come back to you with the range of numbers that will help you make a decision.
When you say scenarios, what do you mean by scenario?
Well, every input can be varied. So
Yeah.
for example, you could have a uniform structure for water usage. So everybody pays the same per gallon.
Right.
Or you could have a block system, so that one of our principles is that the structure should support water conservation. So you might want to have one of the scenarios could have uniform pricing, and one of the scenarios could have different blocks. So
Right.
if you use lots of water, you get charged this much per unit, and if you use this much, you get this, and if you only use this little amount, you only get charged this much per unit.
No, I'm assuming
So those are different scenarios.
got it. I'm assuming in your approach, you're considering the fact that some properties have counters and others, it's based on I think it's the number of rooms or whatever it is that the company uses, right?
You tell me, what does the company use? Because I have nothing but names, addresses, and usage and amount charged.
So we have people on meters.
Yeah, and
Do we?
people that are not on meters.
Right.
Oh, who's on a meter?
Well, I don't know.
There are people on meters.
I mean,
Well, we get charged
I
by
am-
our usage, so probably everyone's on a meter.
well,
No,
no, that's the whole thing. Like for the bed and breakfast, I have a meter for the bed and breakfast, but where Isabel and I live in the back, is just on a flat rate based on a criteria, which I don't remember what it is. I think the
Ah.
criteria has to say, I think it has to do with how many people would be living there normally. I think they wanted to change just the number of rooms, and then those are the
So
backlash.
when I the Otaquechee engineering report,
Uh-huh.
there was a section about water usage. And some people are on a meter because they chose to be on a meter. Okay.
So
So
obvious-
Tom, is this
It seems,
making any
okay, so it
sense?
seems to
Doesn't
me
make
that
sense
you
to
would
me.
only choose to have a meter installed if you thought you could get
Well,
because you had low usage.
But can I just hold it?
Go ahead.
So the data that we have, Tom, the spreadsheet that I've looked at, everybody has a usage.
yeah, but
But it's
So
arbitrary.
does this conversation make any sense?
In
to
the
you?
engineering report, it says some people have a 1.5-inch line. Some people have a 1-inch
That's the
line.
pipe size?
so okay.
Yes, and so some of that usage is based on how big the pipe is going
No,
into
so
your
two different
premise.
things, two different.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so
So
wait a second.
usage is
It's a flat
number of,
rate.
is actual water that is pushed through the pipes, whatever size.
Yep.
Capacity is a different charge
Right.
based on that pipe size.
So I think
So are you suggesting that they put the two together somewhere?
Yeah, I think so.
I
I'd have
think the reason why you see usage everywhere, because there is metered actual usage and then there's inferred usage based on that model.
Okay.
And that's why they call it old usage. But all I'm saying is, we're not trying to solve for this today. What I'm saying is, double check that.
Inferred usage.
Well,
Okay.
I'm calling it
So
like that.
Let's ask Tom. Because Tom's been in the water committee all the way through. Do you understand
Yeah.
this, Tom?
I understand the issue, but my last read on this was that it was an issue and there wasn't a resolution. We didn't have a clear answer.
Right, and the reason why this is important, because it may impact the blocks that you're proposing. Because those blocks could actually be measuring real usage versus inferred usage, right?
Mhm.
So that's why I'm raising it today.
So one of our other principles
Yep.
is that the structure that we propose has to be, you have to be able to implement it based on the measures you currently have.
Right.
So we can make this very, very sophisticated in future, but until there's more sophisticated measurement systems, you can't do it. So we're limited to current measures.
I
It's
agree with you.
not- Okay, but it's not even sophisticated. It's just up to date for everybody to have a meter
But you can't,
where it goes into their premises.
but
So you
you
know, then,
but that's
how
a
much?
change. That's a change.
yeah,
So we
and some
can't,
people are not gonna like that.
well, we're not going to propose it. We're coming up with a scenario that is how you can charge for water the day after you've bought the company.
Well,
Okay, but what you haven't talked about, you're talking about people who are using the water.
Yes.
What about the people who are not?
So we've,
How are you gonna charge them?
so we'll have
How are-
a new connection fee and whatever.
No, I'm talking about the greater.
So,
people who are
okay,
never gonna
I was
use
gonna raise that, but can we just finish the conversation around this? The reason why I'm thinking it's a challenge is because if you approach sort of the fee structure, a proposed fee structure based on blocks, let's say restaurants, hotels, stores, et cetera. It's obviously driven by some assumptions that these are higher users than, say, a smaller home or something like that, right?
Not
Oh,
necessarily, because a home could have a sprinkler system, a swimming pool, multiple
Fine,
people.
But the point I'm trying to make is you can have a small store that, you know, has a metered usage that appears to be as much as a larger home, whereby the larger home does not have a meter and it's just based on an inferred calculation. I get your point. I get the challenge that we have to use the measurements that we have, but at the same time, we have to keep in mind that those measurements are not necessarily accurate.
Okay, this is the first time I've heard about inferred measures.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
So,
Oh, yeah.
every time you ask a question of the data, the quality of the data gets worse.
Yeah, well, okay. The other point that I wanted to raise is, and this is to Alan's point, that there's really three big buckets, right? And I'm not clear, it's not clear to me where the involvement of the finance committee is. Number one, there's the purchase, okay?
Mhm.
And, you know, the determination of the purchase price and how it's going to be purchased and
We're not
funded.
involved in that,
Okay, fine.
my
And,
understanding.
okay, great. And two, there is the sort of immediate necessary upgrades that are driven by state type regulations around fire
We're
hydrants.
not involved in that.
Okay, and then there is, I guess, future upgrades and the usage fees.
So my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, my understanding is that we are advising the select board on possible fee structures. And we will advise the select board about bonds.
About financing, yes.
cover- Yeah, Tom, go
Well,
ahead,
what,
sorry.
Eric sent around a note, which was interesting after our meeting, where he said that he thought all this prioritizing of our principles was good, but he was very concerned about how to pay for it on day one. And we need, once we get back our accounting analysis, if it's like what I'm used to, we will have a review of the past financials and a review of the business plan, 3, 5, 10 years, however long they've analyzed it.
Yeah.
And based on that, and based on the opportunities we have through the bond bank, through various state funds or federal funds, we'll know what kind of financing opportunities we have. And then we'll propose a structure. Alex, one of the team members, had suggested that he thought we would just assume the existing debt of the Woodstock Aqueduct Company, which is around $1 million.
Yeah, and
That's
the
not
idea
clear
was
to
to
me.
pretty much, that would be the purchase price, right?
But
So
this is-
like-
Right.
This is,
But you're going to want to immediately, I would think, get in the low-cost financing that you have available,
Right,
as opposed to keeping the Woodstock financing.
and so that's what I mean by we want to advise on the bond, because we want to advise, using Tom's word, that it's better to get some of the bond that you need for the immediate repairs than do it once in June and again in September and again next year. So
Right.
he's going to give a financial view.
Okay, good. And I'm presuming that John, I know that John and I are working on the financial model, but
Yes.
I'm more his auditing guy and he's the guy who's building it, right? I'm assuming that John can reach out to the two of you to get those types of information so that that would feed into the model, right? Which is purchase / immediate upgrade. I'm thinking mostly about the hydrants, and then usage fees and potentially future upgrades.
So I have been having many conversations with John, and we will feed him the inputs
Great.
for the structure.
Okay,
And then he will just assume different final numbers.
Yeah.
Within the model. That's the purpose of a model.
okay.
So we're not making decisions.
No,
We
no.
should be in a place to give advice.
No.
And even, and it's just not very easy because it sounded so simple to start with, but you can't do real analysis. So we're struggling to keep it based on pure fact, no judgment, totally different scenarios. We don't need to argue about the right answer, just build different scenarios.
Right.
But if you haven't got the inputs, because you haven't got the data like pipe sizes, then how much can you actually put into your model? And now you're telling me that the usage data isn't even good. So
Well, it depends on your definition of good. It's whatever we have to work with, but you need to be aware of how those numbers are come to, right?
The people don't
So-
have
right,
those,
how many people don't have meters?
because the person has to pay to have a meter put in. That's why when I read that, I thought, well, you would only pay to have a meter put in if you thought could diminish your
Gonna
bill.
lower your bill.
I mean, maybe the recommendation is to have
Why would
everybody
you-
have a meter.
Well, that's, I mean, that's so obvious.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even
It
wanna,
seems to me,
but who pays for it? That's another,
it can't be that expensive to. put a
oh,
meter in.
you know what contractors charge? If you tell someone it's gonna cost you
But-
$2,000.
No, but at that point, it's the town that would be negotiating the contract.
Do you have
But
remote-
Or
anyway.
just tell people.
Surely you have
Yeah,
remote
exactly.
reading and that pays for itself.
No, there is no
Only-
reading everywhere.
Only in other cities that I've lived in, they have those kind of meters. I'm sure that when I read,
They ring at our door,
the
and
person,
let them in for them to
the
go.
person
read the
with
meter.
the meter goes and reads it and was feeding the information
Right.
to the company.
But
That's,
you don't have
that's a
any.
kind of meter. that
We have a meter for the B&B and we don't have one for our home in the back.
And you get two different bills.
Yes.
I have two,
And you read.
House
the
div-
meter.
I have a house divided into two.
I let her in and she reads it.
So
so.
Okay,
I have a house that's divided into two, we get
Yeah.
one bill.
Yeah.
Apparently we get charged for having two dwellings, all in the same bill.
Anyway, so, okay, I mean, we don't wanna,
there we go.
the purpose of the meeting is just to have an update here, but I guess
There you go,
congratulations, there's another set of challenges. Can we move on to the wastewater?
Oh, yes,
Okay.
that's me too.
Yeah.
Okay, wastewater. I'm looking for somebody to come and work with me. So we have connected with the Energy Committee so that it's not, so the finance is there, because I'm there, and energy is there. Harry is there as the regional energy coordinator, so that as we look at what's going on with the wastewater plant, both financial and environmental concerns are being taken up.
Mhm.
However, I have to tell you that the path is pretty much laid, that this is what we need, and it's going to cost 22 million.
Well, it's EPA mandated, right? So,
Yeah, I read that.
So we can try and tweak it as we get into final design and make sure that certain things are being taken account of. For example, long-term operating expenses. We got Efficiency Vermont involved in the conversation, and they will give many incentives to make sure that the equipment being installed has the latest in AI technology, which means it's predictive and the running cost should be lower because you're going to predict usage, weather, and all the rest of it. And so you reduce the costs as much as
Mm.
possible.
Hmm.
I
Well-
think that was if the,
Yeah.
I think that was a benefit of the efficiency of Vermont getting involved.
When
So
you talk about
that's a win.
incentives, are we talking about grants as well that might reduce that bill for us? The 22
Efficiency,
million?
Efficiency Vermont paid for a lot of the equipment that was installed in the fire station because they want people to use cutting edge technology. Cutting edge technology costs money. They pay for that equipment so that they get test cases. So that's the scenario that we're working on.
And is that gonna reduce the 22 million or that's on top? They're just gonna give us some free equipment?
22 million is a ballpark. They've only done initial design things. Final design will be happening in the next 12 months, and
Okay.
that's the only time you'll get real costs.
Are you running scenarios on that as well, just like you have scenarios on the water company whereby there was this whole debate in town as far as this is an extraordinary type of expense. And, should that be partially shared with people that are not connected to the sewer system? Just because, they do get
I think
a
that,
remote benefit from it, right?
so I think that the who pays is a conversation for the wastewater team to pick up. But honestly, we have to get through the water one first and hopefully we'll learn. And then we can use some of the same methodology.
Okay, okay. Anything else on the wastewater?
Anybody interested in joining us? Me? Tom stepped off for a bit.
Oh. That's too bad because he's not connected to the system and it would have been good to have his perspective.
You're on,
Yeah,
I'm on
you're on the sewer system,
with Southwood Star.
or the Southwest stuff.
It's the same, it's the same
It's the
charging
same, I know,
Um,
same system. Essentially.
Well, I'm already on
Well, I
two
guess I could
projects,
do
but
it because the ones I volunteered for are sort of dead in the water right
Yeah,
now.
that would be good. Thank you.
okay, all right, so, and then just a reminder, whenever, you get to some sort of a milestone or something that's worthy of sharing, please put your documents in the shared
Mhm.
folder.
I
Okay?
hope we'll get there tomorrow
Yeah.
with at least the inputs and
Yeah.
the principles
Okay.
established.
All right, and then the next project is the empty lots. I know Tom is not here, but,
An update for that though.
okay,
So he has been talking to the planning office and they're a bit busy with short-term rentals right now, but they hope to move on to this in May and they've been working on something that will help
okay.
early
And-
May.
And as a reminder, this is to find a way to not necessarily incentivize people to build on those empty lots that are buildable, but to de-incentivize them from leaving them empty, pretty much.
Mhm.
Okay, all right, great. All right, if there's no questions on that, I'm gonna continue. The financial model, all right, so we got together with John. Last time John had prepared sort of a proposed schedule. And we took a step back, mainly after we saw what happened with the whole school bond. And even though the folks that were part of that team that was trying to push forward, people approving the bond had circulated that model, we realized that a lot of people did not know how to use the model. And, I have an above average level of education and it took me a couple of hours to figure out how it works. Okay. Yeah. It wasn't just evident. You go in, you plug numbers, etc.
Mhm.
Right?
I must have been very simplistic, but it worked for me.
Okay. So, well, each time I understood where to input the information, but then the interpretation, I had like follow-up questions and things like
Oh,
that.
I-
So that's what I'm talking about,
Okay.
right? And so we tried to learn from this and we decided that the finance model that we're building needs to be really very simple, okay? As simple as it can be. Very clearly, what variables, are you actually changing or can you change, et cetera. For two reasons. One is we want to allow as a first phase after it's presented to the finance committee, and the objective is to have that ready sometime towards middle to latter part of the summer. Okay,
The water is separate, right?
well, the water is one feeder into it.
So the water modeling will be done, can be done separately, because that needs to be done by June.
Right,
Well, you know what, you should talk to John about this because, I think he can tweak it that certain things can be done on a sort of a standalone basis. But the idea ultimately is to do a top-down whereby we would have a high-level view of the major projects, how those would overall impact sort of the property tax bill. And then a drill down, looking at ranges of values for homes and trying to figure out if your home is that value, it means more or less that impact for you, okay?
Yes.
Because overall, everybody freaked out with the school. Everybody thought, you know, everything was going to increase by 18% or whatever the number was. But actually, it's not true. It's going to increase more than that for certain people and much less for other people.
Mhm.
And so we want to avoid that. And we're trying to learn from this.
Yeah.
Okay. And somehow we want to include, we want to try to include in the model the regular school taxes because, you know, people don't like to make decisions in a vacuum. Yeah, it makes sense, you know, to do this and that, but just remember, there's all these other 6 other things that I have to pay for now. They're also increasing. So,
But wouldn't the school tax, if we fix the building, go down? Aren't they spending a lot on maintenance right now? They keep complaining. That's the question.
Over a million.
yeah, I mean, when I looked at the model, there was a down sloping sort of
Okay.
view of the graph, right? So I don't have the exact answers.
Yeah.
And by the way, I reached out to Ben Ford because there's a few things we need to clarify. So making a long story short, we're continuing to work on the model. John is continuing. I'm continuing to look at what he does and pushing back on certain things. And there's 2 sets of variables at the end of the day. There's a set of variables that are what I would call more objective, and these are the financial variables. Okay, and you could play with those. What's the size of the bond? What's the interest rate? What's the term of the bond? Do we have a grant or don't we have a grant? And then there's another set of variables which we would be calling the policy variables, which are more subjective because these are decisions that need to be made either by the voters or by the select board as far as how is this going to be paid for, because that's going to impact not the overall bill, but it's going to impact pretty much as you start breaking it down. Are you in the village? Aren't you in the village? You know, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So this is where it gets a little bit more complicated. And that's why the communication strategy needs to be very crisp and clear around this. Okay, so
But
that's.
again, those are scenarios because we're not, we can recommend alternatives.
These are scenarios. And the idea is sometime, so I pushed back on John a little bit because he wanted to push it further out, but sometime probably end of August or September to be able to give a model that's ready for the select board to look at and to play with, quote unquote. Okay.
It would be interesting to look at that timing. We ought to know the last day on which you can put a proposal in for a bond for the November election, because that's the proposed timing.
Okay, well, it's recorded. So John, when you're gonna hear this, make sure that you loop back with Jill that is taken into account. Okay.
Charlie Didenic.
Yep. All right, so that's the financial model. Any questions on that? There's going to be a lot of follow-ups on this, but it's going to be a very powerful tool. And the other reason why we want to make it simpler is because at some point, you know, either one of us will win the lotto, go live in Brazil or something, but we're not going to be here anymore on the finance committee, and somebody else should be able to use that model and update it.
Definitely.
Right.
I think that's very important.
Yep. Okay. Next is the town village accounting and reporting, Ellen.
Well, as I reported last time, that has been pushed out another year, so there's really no working committee on that. I mean,
What was the purpose of this? Can you just remind?
okay, so we have NIMRIC, our accounting.
Oh, yeah, NIMRIC. Okay,
our
I got it. Yeah.
Accounting system.
Yeah.
And so replacing that system with something better that we can do management reports on, for example. But they're looking at, it ties into the other, the whole reporting system in Woodstock. So we have people, like the listers need something from the town clerk. So he has to make copy and take it up.
Got it.
So the other thing is to, to modernize and have everything paperless eventually. So
Okay.
it would be
Does,
a bigger system.
does that go hand in hand with your next project, which is the
The
financial
two go
software?
together. Yeah,
Yeah, they have to go
because
together.
it would,
Yeah,
it would all be in an
Right,
integrated.
right. And so then the other one is on hold too.
Well, the financial software, as you know, management reporting was one of the important things that we want to improve.
Right.
And John did a lot of work on it. But even that has sort of fallen by the wayside.
Mhm.
So, I mean, the only other idea that I had was, I know NIMRIC has a reporting module, which I've heard doesn't work very well. But that's what you've heard, or you've
No.
actually been on,
I've tried to use. them
you did try.
reports. Oh, no, I've just tried to use the reports. I haven't ever tried to design a report.
Okay,
Okay,
so that's sort of where we are.
and so
So we don't have good I mean, we still have the same reports.
I guess my,
That Zoe was burning in. As far as I know, I haven't seen any.
I guess my question is, what led to postponing it by a year? What factors led to
Because
postponing
buying
it by
a
a
new
year?
system we're talking, it could be $100,000 or so. And when we did the last budget,
Yeah,
it's not in there.
but shouldn't there be a process that leads us to determining the type of
Yeah.
system that we would need? And can that continue? Can that work continue?
If they start it up, it's really in the hands of Eric. That's why it would have been preferable for him to talk about it.
Hmm.
Since he sometimes comes to the meeting.
not these 2 days. He's,
Okay, all right, so
I don't know
guess,
if anything has been done.
yeah, I guess my,
Other than, there's an idea, a little bit of chatter.
okay, and the role of the finance committee was to support that project team?
But it hasn't really, we don't really have a project,
Okay,
so. That's hard to support.
yeah. No, I'm
But I'll
just curious.
switch, can switch to the wastewater.
Yeah, no,
Until it kicks off. When
yeah,
it
yeah.
kicks off,
Yeah.
everything you touch is just,
No, I'm
it
just
sounds so
concerned.
simple, doesn't it? When you start
Yeah.
at this level.
I-
And then
I-
when you get to this level, it's
Yeah.
complicated. And when you get here, it's a nightmare.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that it looks like a decision has been made to postpone it by a year, and it looks like the driver of that is because it's not in the budget, but I don't think this should preclude us
Well,
from beginning the process to just do the analysis.
And because the next budget process is about to start in August, which is only a few months away.
Yeah,
yeah,
okay. All right,
so
so,
then we'll have to kick off and do
Mm.
some work on it.
okay, fine. All right, so I guess you gave us an update on the financial software at the same
Mhm.
time, right?
Yes.
So the next one is the benchmarking. So as you recall, last time we came up with a bunch of ideas to benchmark, and we finally ended on recommending that we should focus on the operating costs for running this joint. But we want to look at it on a per capita basis, because that would be the grand equalizer, right? Because not every town is the same size that we are. So then we said, okay, so we're going to take this recommendation to Eric. So we actually met with Eric Duffy, and he likes that as a first project. And we also didn't want to take towns that were too big, so we put a cap at 10,000 people. And we didn't want to take a town that was too small, so we put a floor at 1,500 people. Because below that and above that, it's our impression that the type of services might really change at that point. Like the needs would change also, okay? Even though every town has its own unique challenges, right? And so he was on board with that. We also shared sort of at a high level some of the key performance indicators or metrics that we would want to look at across a variety of towns. Most importantly, we went through a number of towns, and we finally ended up on 5 of them. We didn't want to have too many towns, but not too few. We figured 5 is a good number. And so the 5 towns that we ended up with were, some of the criteria besides the size of the population was, we need to have at least a few towns that have a critical and impactful tourist season, so they look like us a little bit. and if possible, a historic center or something like this. Not necessarily towns that have separate structures as far as village or town. Frankly, we would prefer that they don't because it's easier to access financial information if they're all consolidated, right? And so we ended up with Stowe, Middlebury, Norwich, Windsor, and one that's not a Vermont town, North Conway, New Hampshire.
Why Windsor?
Just Windsor was one of those towns that doesn't have really a tourist type of thing to it, and we wanted one that wasn't exactly like us, because maybe it will inform us on something.
So
We don't
Stowe,
really know.
Stowe, Windsor, Middlebury, North Country,
North Conway and Norwich.
not Manchester?
No, and the reason why, well, first off, we wanted to pick 5 and not 6 because then it's a lot more work, right? It's because we were a little bit concerned that the whole outlet situation there is a little bit too much of an outlier that may
Right.
be driving certain things that we wouldn't be able to explain, or may not be, but we wouldn't be able to know if there's a correlation or not.
I think Windsor might need some re-examination. I don't think it would be helpful.
Okay, well, I mean, we could take a look. The reason why we chose Windsor is because, okay, nothing against Windsor, but it's more of a, we're being recorded, so I have to be careful what I say. Doesn't maybe have the same sort of characteristic as far as attractiveness as some of the other towns. And that's one of the reasons why we chose it, is because it could be that a town that doesn't have things like that may inform us on the way they run their operations. And that's why we chose it.
And what's the population of Windsor?
I don't have the presentation with me, but if you go in our folder, the presentation that was put in front of Eric breaks down the population levels for all of those towns. And by the way, we also looked at how much snow they get per year, et cetera, right? Because you know, we want them to have challenges fairly close to ours.
Okay.
With the salting and the. All right, so at this stage, Eric said he would reach out to the town managers of those towns to give them a heads up that we're going to be trying to collect data. Anything that we can't find on their website, hopefully we can find most of it on the website. We're gonna have to contact someone. And at first we said, okay, let's look at the past 5 years of financial data, which means we have to go and look at the population change in 5 years, but I sincerely doubt it, you know, didn't probably move that much. But then the question was, should we use actuals or budgets? And it's Roger and my conclusion that actuals probably for municipalities, not like a corporation, probably don't vary that much compared to budgets. And it's going to be much easier to get budget information than actuals information. So we're going to go after budgets.
And then how are you going to count tourists?
Well, I'm not sure that counting tourists is something that we need for the benchmarking study of operating costs. Not quite sure. You see what I'm trying to say?
No, it's interesting, isn't it? Whether you do
Yeah.
count them or don't count them.
Right.
So how would you count your bed and breakfast establishment? Are you per capita, right? So per capita, there's 2 people in my house. Are we going to be counted as 2?
Well, the per capita is the population of every town. So yeah, and anybody who lives there, okay?
But we have a lot of empty houses in Woodstock, so is that an outlier
Well,
versus?
we,
Interesting, won't it? So a second,
Second home
somebody
stuff
who's not
or-
here permanently, a non-homesteader won't get counted, a tourist won't get counted.
well, somebody who's not considered a quote unquote registered resident is not gonna get counted, right?
Yeah.
Because the population come from the census.
Yeah.
And the census number or whatever the numbers are, right? But at some point, we had to be able to find a way to normalize the dollars, right? Because, you know,
Well-
Stowe's probably gonna have a much bigger budget than us.
Mhm.
But then, you know, we can also look at different things in order to normalize. We can look at, all right, what's the percentage of the operating cost of the highway department as part of the total budget and compare that and see if we can normalize at that, right?
You might be able to get to miles of road,
That's actually an idea. I'm gonna write that down.
miles of tarmac, miles of asphalt and miles of dirt.
If this data is available.
I've always wanted to know the cost of one versus the other.
All right, so this is where we stand now. The next step is to start collecting the data, ensuring that Robert and Eric's team gives us the information for our town, and then going on the websites of those towns. So I'm handling Norwich, Windsor, and North Conway, and Roger's working on Stowe and Middlebury. So
I'm not sure, you said something before and I agreed with it.
Yep.
That a budget is a good proxy for an actual. Why wouldn't you go for actuals? Actuals are in town reports.
Are they? They're next to the budget numbers normally. It would be last year's actual or last year's budget. Because there's a.
You know, one of the
we'll
things
take
that
a look at it.
NIMRIC is quite capable of spewing out actuals by line the last 5 years.
I mean, I prefer actuals, right? But
Well,
if
then
it's,
ask the town managers.
but if it's gonna be so difficult to get actuals for those other
So-
towns, I'm just gonna go with budgets, and then you have to compare apples to apples, so we'll use budget.
So here's an advantage. If you
Yeah.
talk to the town manager, get them to do, to have NIMRIC spew out the past 5 years actions and give it to you in an Excel sheet, could be wonderful.
Yes.
NIMRIC can download to an
Yeah.
Excel sheet.
Now you have to keep in mind that we're also not gonna do the analysis at the line level. We're gonna do it at the totals level, right? Meaning, total salaries, total benefits,
Yeah.
total
That's
cost
when
of,
NIMRIC falls down.
That's where we.
total cost of the highway department. But
You'll be lucky. Okay,
Because-
good luck.
no, what I'm trying to say is if you're gonna do a benchmarking study.
I know, I understand
and,
why,
you
but
know,
you
we-
know the quality of the data.
No, I understand.
Salaries are in 10 different lines.
Right. But I don't know, maybe in some other towns, they have a way to roll down. But actually, John was able to roll up the numbers. So they should be able to.
You
roll
do
up
it
the
manually with
Because
many
there's-
hours
there's
of
nothing
work.
in There's nothing in the code that tells, there should, when it was set up, there should have been something in the code.
That tells it it's a benefit,
That
that
says
tells it it's a
benefit,
salary.
that's a benefit
Yeah.
line, that's a salary
Yeah.
line. But it was set up all sort of whack-a-mole. So, sorry.
Well, look,
But,
I mean, once we start digging into it, we'll see where we go, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you've got to be able to at least do highway department level.
Yeah. And then, ultimately, we're not gonna start digging immediately. First, we're gonna look at the high level numbers and see if there's some discrepancies there between the towns.
Hmm.
And once we start seeing those, whether they're actually good in our favor or, at our disadvantage. And then at that, we start digging down a little bit. All right, so then the next one, was there one last one? Sorry. Regionalization. John is not here, and I'm not sure if Cynthia's on today.
No, it's not.
No. All right, well, I guess we're not getting an update on that one, right?
Hey.
All right. Anything else we need to cover today?
I just want it noted, this is hard work. I'm an analyst and I love data, but
One of the biggest challenges is trying to make decisions with incomplete set of data. And, this is how successful corporations do it.
by having data,
By having sometimes incomplete sets of data and trying to make decisions based on that.
right.
So,
Well, I also believe in the law of large numbers, so we have to rate at that level too.
I mean, look, we at least should try, and I don't think an effort has been deployed at this level before, and we're trying. And if we hit a wall, we either try to destroy that wall or go above it or around it. But if we can't, we can't.
Okay.
So, all right, anything else? All right.
Not for me.
Okay. Does he call for an adjournment vote or we just
Yes.
adjourn? Okay, so
I'll make a motion to adjourn
Jill motions to adjourn
Second.
and Tom seconds.
and then we don't need to vote.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, folks.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Well,